Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be looking at the Springfield 3. It says that on Wikipedia, it says it refers to an unsolved missing person case that began in June 7th, 1992, when friends Suzanne, known as Susie Streeter, and Stacy McCall and Streeter's mother, Sherrill Levitt, went missing from Levitt's home in Springfield, Missouri. All of their personal belongings, including cars and purses, were left behind. There were no signs of a struggle except a broken porch-light globe. There was also a message on the answering machine that police might believe might have provided a clue about the disappearances, but it was inadvertently erased. In 1997, Robert Craig Cox, a convicted kidnapper and robber, claimed that he knew the women had been murdered and that their bodies would never be recovered. Neither their whereabouts nor their remains have been discovered. I don't believe in hurting people and torturing people, but when somebody says something like that and you feel like they know something about 3 women, it makes you feel like, huh? You know? To get information, because just give it up, dude. Anyway, the victim, Sherrill Elizabeth Levitt, was 47 years old at the time of her disappearance. She was 5 foot tall, 110 pounds. So she was a very tiny, petite woman with short, light blonde hair, brown eyes, and pierced ears. She was a cosmetologist at a local salon and was a single mother described as being very close to her daughter, Suzanne Elizabeth Susie Streeter. Streeter was 19 years old. She was 5'2" and 102 pounds, with shoulder-length blonde hair and brown eyes. Her distinguishable marks included a scar on her upper right forearm, a small mole on the left corner of her mouth, and pierced ears, left ear being pierced twice. Stacy Kathleen McCall was 18 years old. She was 5 foot 3 inches tall and 120 pounds, with long, dark blonde hair and light-colored eyes. So they were all very tiny. Streeter and McCall graduated from Kickapoo High School on June 6, 1992. They were last seen around 2 a.m. on June 7th, when they were leaving the last of the few graduation parties they had attended that evening. At some point during the night, they were also seen in Battlefield. The pair planned to spend the night at their friend Janelle Kirby's house, but when they decided Kirby's house was too crowded, they instead left to go to Streeter's and thus Levitt's home on 1717 East Delmar Street to retire for the night. It is assumed they arrived because their clothing, jewelry, purses, and vehicles were all present at the house the next day. Levitt was last heard from at approximately 11:15 p.m. on June 6 when she spoke with a friend on the phone about painting an armoire. The alleged timeline of the 3 is suspected to be convoluted, as the friends who last saw the girls the previous evening were also the first to arrive at the Levitt home the next day. The following morning, around 9 a.m., Kirby and her boyfriend visited the house after Streeter and McCall failed to show up at her home. They had planned to spend the day at a water park and were supposed to leave from Kirby's residence. Upon arriving, Kirby found the front door unlocked and entered the home, but found no sign of Streeter, McCall, or Levitt. Each of the women's cars were parked outside. She also reported to the police that the glass lampshade on the porch light was shattered, though the light bulb itself was intact. But somebody could have loosened it. Kirby's boyfriend, or maybe there was, I don't know. Kirby's boyfriend innocently helped her sweep the broken glass off the porch, which police later determined may have destroyed potential evidence. Inside the house, Kirby found Levitt and Streeter's dog, a Yorkshire Terrier named Cinnamon, who appeared agitated. While inside, Kirby also answered a strange and disturbing call from an unidentified male who made sexual innuendos. She hung up and immediately received another call of a sexual nature, again hanging up the phone. Several hours later, McCall's mother, Janice, who also visited the house after failed attempts to reach her daughter by phone, inside she noticed all three women's purses were sitting on the floor of the living room, and also saw her daughter's clothing neatly folded from the night before. Levitt and Streeter's cigarettes were also left inside the house. Janice frantically called the police from the home's telephone to report the three women missing. After placing the call, while checking the phone's answering machine, she listened to a strange message, but it was inadvertently erased from the tape. Police were very interested in the call and believed it may have contained a clue. They also did not believe it was connected to the prank calls Kirby received. McCall's parents contacted police in reference to their daughter's disappearance from Levitt's home more than 16 hours after the women were last seen. And other worried friends and family called and visited the home the following day. Police later estimated that the crime scene had been corrupted by 10 to 20 people who visited Levitt's house. Upon the officers' arrival, the scene showed no signs of a struggle except for the shattered porch light. Police also noted Levitt's bed had been slept in. All personal property was left behind, including purses, money, cars, keys, cigarettes, and the family dog. On December 31st, 1992, a man called the America's Most Wanted hotline with information about the women's disappearances, but the call was disconnected when the switchboard operator attempted to link up with Springfield investigators. Police said the caller had prime knowledge of the abductions and publicly appealed for the man to contact him, but he never did. Levitt and Streeter were declared legally dead in 1997. However, their case files are still officially filed under missing. Investigators received a tip that the women's bodies were buried in the foundations of the south parking garage at Cox Hospital. In 2007, crime reporter Kathy Baird invited Rick Norland, a mechanical engineer, to scan a corner of the parking garage with ground-penetrating radar. Norland found three anomalies, roughly the same size, that he said were consistent with a gravesite location. Two of the anomalies were parallel, and the other was perpendicular. Police spokesman Lisa Cox said that the person who reported the tip provided no evidence or logical reasoning behind this theory at the time or since then. She also said the parking garage began construction in September 1993, over a year after the disappearances. Digging up the area and subsequently reconstructing the structure would be extremely costly, and without any reasonable belief that the bodies could be located here, it is illogical to do so. And for those reasons, SPD does not intend to. Investigators have determined this lead to not be credible. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Daryl Moore, a former assistant at the Greene County Prosecutor's Office, said the tip came from someone who either claimed to be a psychic or claimed to have a dream vision about the case. But they found three anomalies roughly the same size that were consistent with a gravesite location, three of them, and they don't think that it's credible? Okie dokie. What are your thoughts on that? In 1997, Robert Craig Cox, imprisoned in Texas as a convicted kidnapper and robber, and the suspect in a Florida murder, told journalists that he knew the three women had been murdered and buried and claimed their bodies would never be recovered. Well, if they're there and it's expensive, maybe not, because it sounds like they're right there. In 1992, Cox had been living in Springfield and, when interviewed then, had told investigators that he was with his girlfriend at church the morning after the women disappeared, which she corroborated. However, she later recanted her statement and said that Cox had asked her to say that. Cox also stated that he was at the home of his parents the night of the disappearance, and they confirmed that alibi. Authorities were uncertain if Cox was involved in the case or if he was seeking recognition for the alleged murders by issuing false statements. Cox stated to authorities and journalists he would disclose what happened to the three women after his mother died. The case remains unsolved as of 2022, in spite of upward of 5,000 tips from the public. In June of 1997, a bench was dedicated to the women inside the victims' memorial garden in Springfield Phelps Grove Park. The case has been featured on shows such as 48 Hours, America's Most Wanted, Investigation Discover aired the Springfield 3 on its disappeared TV series. In 2019, the same channel's People's Magazine Investigates featured a tabloid-styled episode titled The Springfield 3. In 2021, journalist Anne Rodriguez Jones, I don't know how to pronounce that. I don't know if it's supposed to be Rodriguez or Rodriguez Jones, launched The Springfield 3, a small-town disappearance podcast. Sherrill Levitt's son and Suzanne Street's brother, Bart Streeter, has previously maintained a blog on the case titled Streeter Family Blog, and there's a link to click to get to them. The links are in blue. Mr. Streeter turned the blog over to his daughter, Dee Streeter, in 2013. So, and there's the references, and you can go to that to find it. And here's the Charlie Project, and it shows photos of Sherrill Elizabeth Levitt, missing since June 7, 1992, from Springfield, Missouri. She was 47 years old, 5 foot tall, and 110 pounds. It says that she was wearing a floral print dress. She had an associated vehicle with older model moss green Dodge van. Band similar to the vehicle possibly involved in the case. Oh, wow. I hear about vans in other cases too sometimes. Sherrill has freckles on her neck and on her upper chest. Her ears are pierced. Her maiden name was Williams. Sherrill was a cigarette smoker at the time of her 1992 disappearance. She wears eyeglasses, but her pair was located inside of the residence. And then here's the details that this said. And it gives the address, and it says that Sherrill and her daughter resided there, and it talks about they graduated from Kickapoo High School. She spent the early part of the evening home, having dinner at home with her mother. Suzanne and her friend Stacy McCall planned to spend the night at a hotel in Branson, Missouri. They decided to stay at another friend's home in Battlefield, Missouri instead. Suzanne called Sherrill at approximately 10:30 p.m. to discuss their plans. Sherrill telephoned a friend at approximately 11:15 that evening. She was painting a chest of drawers at the time and gave no indication that anything was amiss inside her residence. Suzanne and McCall returned to Sherrill's residence at approximately 2:15 a.m. on June 7th after deciding that their friend's home was too crowded. They planned to meet other friends at Whitewater Amusement Park in Branson later that day. The girls drove their separate vehicles to Sherrill's house. Neither they nor Sherrill have been heard from again. Neighbors did not hear any suspicious activity near Sherrill's home during the overnight hours. One of the girls' friends phoned and visited Sherrill's residence several times during the day in an attempt to locate the three women. McCall's family alerted authorities about the disappearance during the evening of June 7th. All of the women's personal belongings were discovered inside the house. Their vehicles were also parked at the home. Sherrill's bed appeared to have been slept in the previous night. Her eyeglasses were beside her bed and a book had been turned over, indicating that Sherrill may have been interrupted while reading. The family's Yorkshire Terrier, Cinnamon, was still inside the house and appeared to be anxious. All of Sherrill's personal belongings were untouched and the television was turned on. There was no sign of a struggle at the residence, but the porch light had been shattered. No additional physical evidence was discovered at the scene. So, and it talks about the cigarettes and the lighters and the women's purses. The blinds in Susan's rooms were pulled apart as if someone had been looking outside. Authorities later admitted that the crime scene had possibly been tainted by 20 or so loved ones who visited Cheryl's house after their disappearance was reported. No one realized the seriousness of the situation until nearly 24 hours had passed. Officers left a note on Cheryl's door asking her to call the police department and cancel the missing persons report when she and the girls returned home. So, yeah. And it talks about that kidnapper and murdered, claiming he knew something. A witness reported observing a woman matching Suzanne's description driving an older model moss green Dodge van later during the day on June 7th. The witness claimed that the woman appeared terrified as an unseen male voice told her, "Don't do anything stupid." The witness did not contact investigators with her account until several days had passed. Additional witnesses reported seeing the Dodge van in different areas of Springfield after the women's disappearances. A man told authorities that he saw the blonde female sitting in the driver's seat of a similar vehicle in the parking lot of a local grocery store. The individual said he wrote the van's license plate number on a newspaper as the vehicle seemed suspicious. The man threw the paper away before contacting investigators. Law enforcement officials agreed to hypnotize the man, but he was only able to provide the plate's first 3 digits. Authorities have been unable to determine if a van was involved in the women's cases. A photo of a similar vehicle is posted with this case summary. A server at George's Steakhouse, one of Cheryl's favorite Springfield restaurants, reported seeing the women in the establishment between 1 and 3 a.m. on June 7th. The employee claimed that Sherrill, Suzanne, and McCall arrived and departed together. She said Suzanne appeared to be intoxicated as the group left the restaurant, and Sherrill was attempting to calm her down. Investigators have never confirmed the possible sighting, and it is not clear if the women visited the eatery before their disappearances. Other witnesses reported hearing a woman scream in the School of Tires in eastern Greene County, Missouri during the early hours of June 7th. Officials searched the area, but no evidence related to the case was located. A composite sketch of an unidentified transient man was released in the days after the disappearances. The individual was allegedly spotted near Cheryl and Susan's residence in early June 1992. Authorities do not know if the man was involved in the case. I wish they had a sketch of that on here. Cheryl's son and Suzanne's older brother, Bart Streeter, and one of Suzanne's former boyfriends were ruled out as suspects in the case early in the investigation. And then it talks about the call to America's Most Wanted that was disconnected. I don't know. One of the investigators theorized that that's just a theory, that the woman's assailant took the dog Cinnamon out of Cheryl's yard during the overnight hours of June 7th in an effort to gain access to the residence. The officer speculated that the attacker knocked on the door, pretending to have rescued the dog after it wandered away from the home. That's just a theory. So, it doesn't... And you can pause it and read that. It says Cheryl's background was investigated for other leads. She and Suzanne moved to Springfield in 1980 from Seattle, Washington. She had divorced her first husband shortly after Suzanne's birth. She told friends that Brent believed they should divorce and continue living together. His plan would have allowed Cheryl to qualify for welfare assistance. Cheryl decided to end the relationship instead. She moved into an apartment complex in Seattle and stayed home with Suzanne and Bart for 6 months after Suzanne's birth. Cheryl received free rent while performing repair work around the complex. Cheryl and Suzanne moved into their home on East Delmar Street in April 1992, 2 months before their disappearances. Cheryl's 1989 divorce from her second husband, Don Levitt, impacted her finances, and she elected to relocate to the smaller residence with her daughter. Don's creditors began asking Cheryl to pay his debts after the divorce. She hired an attorney to locate him without success. Cheryl was employed at New Attitudes Hair Salon on West Sunshine Street in Springfield in 1992. She had 250 clients at the time of her disappearance and was considered a model employee. Her family members describe her as a private person who had a close relationship with Streeter in 1992. The women's relatives had them both declared legally deceased in 1997, 5 years after their disappearances. A bench was dedicated to them in Victims Memorial Garden in Springfield, Phelps Grove Park the same year. Their cases remain unsolved. And this is Stacy Kathleen McCall, 18 years old at the time, 5'3" and 120 pounds. Such a beautiful young lady. Says she has hair is lighted from the sun at the ends. She has facial freckles. She has an off-center cleft in her chin and birthmarks on her chin or her lip and her right arm. Her ears are pierced. She had a tan complexion at the time of her disappearance. So, it says Stacy and Suzanne left their friend's residence after the police were summoned due to a noise complaint. So they went to Suzanne's home. So, yeah. I wonder if somebody complained about the noise to get them to go home. I wonder if they checked to see who complained about the noise. If they had like a 911 call and knew where the phone call came from. I wonder if the person who made the call wasn't a neighbor but was somebody else trying to get those girls to go home. Because they had ill intentions. So, and this just reads, I think it reads exactly the same as the other page because it's the same. It is the Charlie Project. There's Suzanne Elizabeth Streeter. Wow, she is beautiful. She was 19 years old, 5'2" to 5'5", and 102 pounds. Wow, she looks like she could be a model or an actor. She's so pretty. Bleached blonde hair, brown eyes, scar on her upper right forearm, a small tumor on the left corner of her mouth, which gives the appearance of chewing tobacco. She has large-sized teeth with no previous dental work. Both of her ears are pierced. Her left ear is pierced twice. A hole in the upper portion of her ear. Her nickname is Suzie. Huh. I don't think there's any more information on those pages. And here's some photos. I don't know if anybody has any information. Wow. That's so sad. They probably didn't even lock their door. That's crazy sad. And this is the Doe Network. And it doesn't. It says 5'3", 120 pounds for Stacy Kathleen McCall. I don't see the NamUs. There's the numbers and the agency contacts if you have information. There's a NamUs link that I guess you could click to get the NamUs number because I don't see it on here. There's Sherrill Elizabeth Levitt, 47 years old, 5 foot tall, 110 pounds. And there's the investigator's phone number, the case numbers if you have information, so that you could probably email them anonymously. I mean, it was probably not the same person's name, but you could probably contact them and remain anonymous to give them information. Apparently somebody out there has information. Somebody out there has information because they contacted them and tried to give them the information, and then they changed their mind. Here's the case numbers. I hope they change their mind again and contact them again and give them the information. I mean, they can remain anonymous and say, hey, I contacted you previously, I was disconnected, I have information, and this is the information, you know. I really hope they contact them again because these young ladies, it's terrible. It's terrible that, you know, if you know something, if you're not letting them know and letting the families know somebody has information and they should come forward with it because apparently they started to. Anyway, we should all stop and we should pray for their families and for those people and for their loved ones and for whoever that came forward before and then changed their mind when the call got disconnected to come forward again. So anyway, it's just heartbreaking. And thank you so much for tuning in. Please feel free to leave comments, your thoughts. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.